Coming up next is Dr. Kimberly Taylor. Here's your chance to talk about what matters to you. Although you will receive helpful advice from Dr. Taylor, remember, this is not to be construed as a form of psychotherapy, diagnosis, or treatment, and cannot replace a therapeutic relationship with a mental health professional. You can reach Dr. Taylor by calling 564-1290 or toll free at 866-564-1290. You can also listen live on the internet at drkimtaylorshow.com. So here now is Dr. Kimberly Taylor.
We're talking about online dating today. In the past, it seems people met their potential partners through family and friends, maybe in school or at work, maybe in a bar or at a social function, and that was about it. Most people viewed online dating as a last resort or something for only the most frustrated of daters. But if you were lucky enough to find a partner through online dating, as a couple, most often you'd make up a fake story about how you met to avoid admitting to the humiliation of needing the digital world to find your true love. Oh, but have times changed? In today's tech-crazy world now, it's no longer a social stigma to date online, but rather an accepted alternative as people worldwide find love or something like it just by clicking their mouse or flicking their finger. And today, more and more people are looking for love or a date or a no-strings-attached hookup, and they are turning to their computers and smartphones to find them. There was a recent study done that showed that online dating is the second most popular means of finding a partner, and the online market is growing every day. So while the traditional routes for meeting a partner are still viable for some, it seems that more and more people are really increasing their odds by tuning in and turning on to the vast landscape of the digital dating world. So what does exist out there? Well, it's been a while since I've been in the dating world, but after researching the endless websites available, I can tell you one thing. Whatever your sexual orientation, whether you're looking for something serious or casual, straight or kinky, immediate or lasting, you will definitely find someone else looking for the very same thing. And according to a Northwestern University study, men are more likely to use online dating services and are 40% more likely than women to send a message or chat after viewing a profile. But there still seems to be much confusion for both males and females when it comes to online dating and mobile apps. The question arises for both genders. Are they supposed to use the sites to look for and or expect hookups, or are they the first step to courtship and getting to know someone? At one time, the most popular online dating sites were Match.com and eHarmony, where they used a simple algorithm to connect their members. Matching couples on a dating site is in a way like matching users to movies on Netflix or buyers to products on Amazon. The purpose was really to be able to match you with someone whom you might actually have something in common with, and where you had a chance to develop a meaningful and maybe even lasting relationship. Well, move over online dating, because here comes mobile dating apps. Now, instead of a complicated algorithm, one of the biggest trends happening seems to be mobile dating apps such as Tinder, Grindr, Blender, OkCupid, or, and yes, this one's out there, Bang with Friends, where matches are based on only one criteria with a quick hit or miss proposition of like at first sight. No information is given, just personal photos and locations to catch you a match. And now a match for what? Well, that's the big question. So while the traditional online dating sites like Match.com and eHarmony are fighting back with even more sophisticated algorithms to more carefully match their members, it seems that the mobile dating apps are increasing in popularity and feeding society's need for instant gratification. So does dating in the time of social media change the way people are falling in love and forming attachments with each other? Is it helping or hurting us as a society as more emphasis is on pursuing casual encounters quickly and less importance on making and keeping long-term relationships? The person helping me to answer some of these questions and trends today is Jessica Carbino, a PhD candidate in sociology at UCLA, whose research focuses on online dating. And she hosts a weekly radio show at UCLA called Hook Up with Dr. Jess. If you would like to call in with a question, or if you have a story about online dating, give us a call at 564-1290 or toll free at 866-564-1290. Stay with me. I'll be right back with my guest after the break. I'm Kimberly Taylor, and you're listening to KZSB AM 1290.
You are listening to Dr. Kimberly Taylor. You can reach her by calling 564-1290 or toll free at 866-564-1290.
So we are looking at online dating and to really see how it has changed and what is out there. It seems that at one time it seemed a bit sleazy even, but it seems now that the research shows that it is and has become a very acceptable way of trying to find a date. So here we are with my guest, Jessica Carbino, a PhD candidate in sociology at UCLA, whose research focuses on online dating. She hosts a weekly radio show at UCLA, and it's called Hook Up with Dr. Jess. So welcome to the program.
Hi, Dr. Taylor. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
My pleasure.
Sure. So how has dating or the dating landscape changed in the last 20 years?
Well, I think it's really changed significantly. As you mentioned, the Rosenfeld and Thomas study shows that individuals find online dating to be the second most common means by which they've met their partner since 2009. The first way is still friends and family, but people are turning more and more to online dating as a means by which to meet a significant other. And this is raising a lot of interesting questions because the population for whom online dating is most commonly used, individuals who are educated and are computer users and white, are also the individuals who are more likely to use this channel because they're also more likely to be living geographically apart from traditional means of meeting people, namely their friends and family. So essentially, the niche market of online dating has really been able to meet the needs of their consumers by providing them with a mechanism to meet people. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it also meets with trends that are happening demographically, with people delaying marriage and childbearing. Individuals are not necessarily meeting partners in the conventional ways they used to, not just friends and family, but also in the workplace and the educational institutions, because there's now so much more transition and delay.
Okay, but why do you actually think that the perception of online dating has changed? And it really has changed more and more in the past few years.
Yes, I think that's been a social learning process, like many things, such as the adoption of birth control. When people started to know that other people were using it, they became more likely to use it as well. And I think that the fact that online dating has been so successful for so many couples, so many individuals are able to meet a long-term partner and have marriages from online dating, that people begin to see it as a viable method to meet their own partner. And therefore, the stigma has been significantly decreased.
Mm-hmm. And is there a certain age group that uses the online dating more?
Sure, people between the ages of 25 to 45 are the most common users of online dating, at least according to the Pew Research Center. But at the same time, individuals who are 60 and above are now the most fast-growing group of online daters, most fast-growing. And this isn't surprising given that people are living longer, higher rates of divorce among people who might have had a marriage and their children left, and now they're turning to online dating to meet somebody because they've been out of the dating game for so long.
Right.
So while it might be used more often among individuals in their 20s to 40s who are probably going into their first marriage, we know that people who are older are now becoming the fastest demographic group in this area.
Okay, but there has to be a huge difference between those that are looking for someone in their 20s versus someone in their 30s or 50s or 70s.
Well, there is a variation, of course, with regards to intentionality, but theoretically, individuals who are in their young 20s, particularly younger men and women, probably are looking for a more casual relationship. But young women who are in their late 20s are probably very comparable to women who are in their 30s. Women who are in their late 20s have probably completed their education and are conscious of their biological clock and are interested in meeting a partner. Young men, maybe that's not the case. But at least for women, I think that there's some type of demographic comparability. At least that's what my data show.
Okay. And for those that are younger, it seems that there really seems to be this hookup culture out there, and it is really emphasizing casual sex and that they're not looking for a long term. So can you kind of define for all of us out here about what a hookup is and really what the boundaries are around what that word means to most people?
Sure. Well, hookup culture has been most commonly defined and associated with individuals who are in college. And a hookup would be a sexual encounter in which there are no strings attached. There's no sense of, I'm your girlfriend, you're my boyfriend, and we have to follow certain social protocols. It's more of a convenient sexual encounter. And the issue with 20-somethings now engaging in this more hookup culture is that because there's been the death of dating in college and the rise of the hookup, individuals in their 20s are persisting in that behavior of just hooking up and casually dating. I wouldn't even call dating in college dating. I would just call it hooking up. But they don't know how to date because they haven't had the experience of doing it. So they're just persisting in this hookup behavior until they reach a certain age or point where they realize, oh no, I'd actually like to have a relationship. And then they have to navigate this area, which can be rather murky.
So if we were to really define what goes on within a hookup and to let people know that how does it start, how does it end? I mean, what does this look like for most people?
Well, that's the problem. Hookups are so ambiguous and there's so much variation. For many people, it might be, for example, at a party, you meet somebody, you're drunk, they're drunk, you're sexually attracted, and you have sex. You may never speak to them. You might get their number and start texting them regularly. You might hang out, and then you might begin a more casual relationship in which sex is the primary denominator linking you two. And theoretically, the hookup may continue for a while. It may fizzle out when you decide, okay, I really don't like this person. Or it may continue for a significant period of time out of convenience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's so much variation. I don't think one hookup can be universally applicable to all hookups. That's not a necessarily fair characterization of what it can look like.
No.
Kind of like one dating scenario isn't necessarily applicable to all dating scenarios.
No, that's true. But I think for just the people who are hearing about this, that for some, it is very shocking to know what is going on. And maybe those are for those that are not college age, that they are past that, they're later in life. And so when they hear about this, and whether it's because they hear about it from different friends or they hear about it because their kids are engaged in this, I think there is and are a lot of parents out there that worry about what does it mean when we send our kids to college and what is this hooking up? And so just to kind of let them know what is going on there will help them to be able to talk to their own children about this.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the issue is that when women started attending college in larger numbers, part of the intention was, at least in the 1950s, was to get your MRS degree. Now that isn't the intention of young women who are attending college or young men attending college. They're not going to college with the intention of finding a long-term marriage partner. They're going to get an education. And for many young people, they look at a partner as some type of hindrance to being able to do what they want to do. We live in an age where young people are very selfish and very self-focused. And the idea of having a partner who could potentially detract from whatever their goals may be, or just having fun and being able to control their schedule, isn't necessarily consistent with what they want. Mm-hmm. So they are able to adopt this casual hookup because it's easy, it's fast, it's convenient, and there are no strings attached. There are no expectations associated with it, and they can essentially do whatever they want without fear of having any type of real relationship consequence. Although hookups certainly are very detrimental to young women, a lot of studies have come out indicating that young women, especially much more than young men, say that there are a lot of psychological consequences associated with being in these hookup relationships and that they undergo a lot of depression from being in relationships that aren't necessarily meaningful.
Okay, so that they can start out feeling one thing is that they'll feel like it feels good to them at first because somebody wants them, so they kind of get high from that. Afterwards, you would say that a lot of people are also feeling a lot of regret, they're confused, they're disappointed in what actually happened and what they engaged in during that hookup process.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And do you think that we should be concerned that young people who are using this kind of dating online or this kind of hookup online, that they're doing it more often than kind of that face-to-face encounter? Do you think that from your research and what you have found out that they're going to lack some of the social skills that they might need to really create a real-world relationship?
Absolutely. I think that the issue is that when we think of online dating sites, or at least when I do, I think about Match, I think of eHarmony, I think of Jaded, I think of OkCupid. But young people in college and very young 20s are using apps, as you mentioned earlier. They're using Tinder, they're using Grindr, they're using, Bang with Friends. And the issue is that by using these apps, they're constantly just scrolling through people and not necessarily meeting people and if they're using it for a hookup and dating. Right. So when you're not actually dating, you're not actually learning about how to interact with a partner, negotiating boundaries, discussing how you feel, and also accommodating the needs of another individual. So I think that college students are, at least now, are at a major detriment because they don't actually seem to be able to negotiate any of these issues.
Okay. Let's come back to that because I do want to talk about the difference between the online dating sites as opposed to the mobile apps. But let's take a quick break and we'll be right back with Jessica Carbino, and we'll be right back after the break. I'm Kimberly Taylor, and you're listening to KZSB AM 1290.
You are listening to Dr. Kimberly Taylor. You can reach her by calling 564-1290 or toll-free at 866-564-1290.
We are talking about online dating, and we're talking with Jessica Carbino, who is a PhD candidate in sociology at UCLA. And she also hosts a weekly radio show at UCLA called Hook Up with Dr. Jess. So one of the questions I have is there are a lot of people out there, and there are a lot of sites that we've heard of, like Match.com and eHarmony.com. But as I've done just a very brief research on it, it seems to be that there's like 2,000 to 3,000 sites out there. So how do people actually know how to choose that what is going to be right for them? Is there a place to go to?
Sure. Well, while the vast majority of individuals are probably sticking with the mainstream sites like Match, eHarmony, OkCupid, and if they're interested in a more niche site related to demographic characteristics like religion or race, they would go to a site maybe like Black Singles or J-Date or Christian Mingle. But at the same time, Dr. Taylor, you wouldn't believe the breadth of sites that are out there. There are sites that are for people who like certain types of salads. There are sites out there where you could correspond with a person who's in prison. So those sites certainly cater to a certain type of individual. But I think that when most people are going about determining what site they use, they think about what have my friends used and what am I interested in looking for? Because through my research, I found that a lot of people have very distinct associations with the various sites. For example, when I interview men, they tell me that when they sign on to eHarmony, they know that the women on it are going to be very marriage-minded because historically, the time that it took to sign on to the site and fill out all of their surveys was incredibly long. It used to be that there were 200 questions. That's no longer the case, but still, it required a lot more in-depth analysis and more of a standard survey process. So they were more concerned about finding a marriage partner if they were signing up for eHarmony, and we're thinking about Match as something that was potentially more casual, and OkCupid as lower than that.
Okay, so do they hear about this because they hear about it from friends, and so it's word of mouth, or is there a place that people go to research? What are the basics that they need to know for each one of these sites so they know whether it's the site for them to go to that would be a good match?
It's more of a social learning process than a Kelley Blue Book process. Unfortunately, there isn't, a major database out there that really delineates every single dating site, the pros, the cons. That would be a great business proposition, but that doesn't really exist right now. When you Google top dating sites, you see eHarmony, Match, and all of the other sites associated come up. And then there are always the niche sites that pop up, but there is no real database that you can go to really find out more in that way. It's more word of mouth and your own investigation.
Okay, so that is one way to go, but it also seems like that more and more people now are really going to their smartphones and their phone apps, and that this is a very different process than going in and signing up and putting your money down and filling out forms to try to get them to make a good match for you. So what is happening with these phone apps? There is one out there that we hear a big buzz about, which is Tinder. Can you tell us how it works, and can you tell us what the experience is of people doing it right now?
Absolutely. So let's start out first with the dating app process generally. So dating apps were initially developed primarily to provide geolocating, so as to be able to match people who are very close together in proximity. And this was really first adopted among the LGBT population with Grindr. And gay men were using Grindr for years prior to apps like Tinder coming about. Now, more conventional online sites such as JDate, eHarmony, Match, and OkCupid have apps as well. But the apps for those dating sites essentially just allow their users to be able to use their sites on the go. So that's the intention for those apps. So that's important to think about because the dating sites realize that people are very mobile, they're moving all the time, and are always glued to their phones. At the same time, we have apps like Tinder, which cater to the more young populations, and that site essentially is a hot or not site, in my opinion, or a hot or not app. When you see Tinder, you sign on, you have only the ability to see whether or not you have a mutual interest or mutual friends, and then you scroll left and right based upon seeing a picture of somebody and a little bit of information that they may or may not write about themselves. So essentially you're just evaluating the person as you would in real life when you see them on the street. Do I like them? Do I not like them? Yes or no? Swipe left for no, swipe right for yes.
What you're saying is that all of these people who are going to these kinds of phone apps and just looking at photos, they're doing the same thing that everybody else has done in a social setting where
Correct.
They're just going to judge people by their appearance alone.
Exactly. I mean, it's like being in a bar. It's exactly like being in a bar. You either decide I'm interested in walking up to this person or I'm not interested in walking up to this person. And then you're ultimately matched with them. But you're evaluating them pretty much on the basis of physical attraction and if there are any mutual interests or friends in common.
Okay, so just slow down a minute just so that I get this straight. Does that mean that most of the mobile apps are really just for hookups and they're not really for finding your true love or dating or finding a match that is good for you? It's just whether you like how the person looks and whether they're close in a vicinity.
Well, the issue is that historically that has been the connotation, and it still is the primary perception that Tinder is a hookup app because it is so much based on this issue of physicality and proximity. At the same time, there are lots of people who want to diversify their portfolio when dating, per se, and sign up for JDate, they sign up for eHarmony, they sign up for OkCupid, and they're on Tinder. So I think that the intentions may vary depending on the user, but certainly individuals associate with Tinder a more hookup connotation.
Okay, so you've called this kind of a hot or not game, and I've heard a lot of people who have started to use this and they've almost become addicted to it because each time that they get a hit, which means that somebody strikes their picture and says that they think that they're hot, it kind of triggers that dopamine receptor in the brain and they kind of get hooked on that. So how does this translate into self-esteem when it's just really being judged exactly for your looks, but that's it?
Well, I think that people aren't thinking about it that deeply. They're just being validated. And I think that, at least for the college students that I've interviewed regarding Tinder, they tell me that the primary reason they are using it is this dopamine receptor effect that you're talking about. They may not label it as that, but you and I do. And they essentially may never have any intention of actually meeting the person, but they want to go on it because of this game theoretic model that's being set up for them. They want to feel validated. So a lot of people are doing that. And I think that men, for example, because women are much less likely to swipe right than they are left on Tinder, men will swipe most people, so they might get matches that aren't necessarily as compatible.
Okay, but really that the focus of Tinder and apps like that they really take on a sexual tone very quickly.
Yes, they do take on a sexual tone very quickly, but online dating can take on a sexual tone very quickly depending on what the intentions of the users are. Right. And in-person interaction can take on a sexual tone very quickly depending on what the intentions of the users are. Online dating just facilitates that factor.
And do you have any research about those who feel depressed or anxious since they have been rejected or not picked up? Is there a lot of study about that, about what these kinds of sites are doing to people's self-esteem these days?
There really hasn't been, but I'm a sociologist. I'm not a psychologist, so I do not study depression. And I think the issue at hand, though, from at least what my research is telling me, that a lot of people feel discouraged by online dating because they are rejected at such a high rate. We know that over 70% of messages online go unanswered. That's a huge rate of non-response. Mm-hmm. And people feel very bad about that. And I think a lot of women and men, ultimately, if they're not getting the response they want, ultimately turn against online dating and go back to more conventional means of meeting people if they're not being accepted. When something isn't working, you don't stick with it usually. And I think that's sort of what's happening.
What I'd like to do is there's a phone call coming in, so let's just take that. Hi, this is Dr. Kim Taylor.
Hello, Dr. Taylor. This is a concerned mom. My name's Eileen, and I have two sons in college right now, and although their father and I did give them a lot of information about safe sex and being careful, in light of your discussion and what's going on right now, are there some additional things that I might bring up with them in a way that won't put them off, but really open their eyes to online dating and some of the dangers that can happen with this casual sex that's happening?
Well, this is one of the main points of why I did want to do this show, is that I think that we need to know what is going on out there, whether it's that the people who are in college and the younger kids need to know this, or whether parents need to know this too. So I think that being able to really educate yourself about what is going on out there so that you can open up the dialogue with your kids about this. But one of the things that I thought I would just toss here to Jess is, what do you think kids need to know, or how can we keep them safer so that they really know what they are going to get into if they start to go on some of these dating sites?
Well, I don't think college students are using the dating sites per se. They might be using these dating apps. And I think that when they're on these dating apps, that you said you have sons, I still think safety is a concern. We always talk about being worried about young women on online dating sites, but we see recently that a lot of young men have become prey to scams and also physical attacks. So I think the first concern of a parent is obviously protecting the physical safety of their child. With regards to the emotional safety, I think, as Dr. Taylor said, I think it's really important to educate yourself about these sites so that you can have this open conversation about them. I think that it would be maybe interesting if you have a very open relationship with your children to just talk about the show and what you heard about on the show today and ask them what they think and what their opinion is. Because by getting their opinion, you're able to provide support for them and advice as their mom.
Thanks very much for the call.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
At this point, I think people may wonder if people can actually form real and meaningful relationships by starting out in this kind of online dating world or the mobile apps. What are your thoughts about this as far as being able to develop healthy relationships?
Absolutely. I think that online dating is just the mechanism by which people meet. Once you meet somebody online, presumably you exchange a couple messages, or on a dating app you exchange a couple texts, but then you have to move it offline. It would be just like if you actually met somebody at a party. You may meet them at the party, you might talk to them there, but if you don't get the other person's contact information, you probably won't see them again. So it's about taking that first step. Online dating opens you up to a pool of people that you might never have necessarily had contact with before. But now that you do, it's important to take that next step and meet them in the real world. Online dating algorithms provide you with as close to what you think you want in a partner, but chemistry is all in person. So I think that's important to think about. Online dating provides you with what you think you want, but once you meet the person, you have to take it from there.
Let's go to the next call. Hi, we're on the phone with Monique. Do you have a question for me?
With online dating, my question is, how can you think that it's a genuine, real relationship when so many things can be lost in translation? Because typing, seeing words on the computer or over your phone, you can't get the tone of what the other person's saying, or they might mean it one way and it comes off to you another, and it just doesn't seem like a consistent communication in order to really get each other and get what the other person's saying. And I just don't understand how you can supposedly fall in love with someone when maybe you're not. They're meaning something one way and you're taking another. How is that genuine?
Okay. So what you're really asking is, can you actually develop a connection and a loving a relationship just by being online, just by texting and trying to create that through the online dating services, right?
Right.
What I would say to you is that you shouldn't base everything just on that, but it can certainly be a good first step. Because it's hard to meet people. So rather than going on blind dates, this might just be a good way to start conversation and then test it out, because you aren't going to know something on the first time that you talk to someone. You're going to need to talk to them a few times. And as you do that and start to develop more of a rapport with them, you're going to know more and more whether what they're saying is true. And then you can ask them questions. So it is still and can be like dating, but you're just on the phone or you're just texting. But it can just be seen as the start of something, not the answer to all of your questions.
I understand that. I understand the getting to know the other person part. It's just, when people who have been online dating for, say, 2 years and they haven't even met, but they claim to be in love and all that, that's what I'm skeptical about.
When I think about this, I also think about it in the context of how dating has happened through the ages. And truth is that people used to correspond by a letter, and they could do that for a number of weeks or months or years prior to the chance that they had to meet. But it's sometimes, for people, it really develops a deeper understanding because you're really sharing a lot of your thoughts. You're not thinking about what the other person thinks about you. You're not concerned about the looks yet. And so you can reach people on a much deeper level, which is what you need to do to be able to have a long-term relationship. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, but at some point in time, they are going to have to meet. They are going to have to be in the same place to know whether they have that chemistry and it works for the two of them.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me now. All right.
Do you date online?
I personally don't, but I know a lot of people that do. A lot of my peers have. I've heard a lot of stories, so I've always been a little skeptical of it, but I have heard so many successful stories as well. So
I've heard both. So just like whether it's a blind date or whether you meet someone at a bar or whether you meet them walking down the street or whether you meet online, there's good stories and there's bad stories. But each person really needs to be safe. They need to proceed slowly and really get to know the person well. It can be a great starter, but there needs to be more than just that involved.
Right, I agree.
Okay, thanks for calling. I'm Kimberly Taylor, and you're listening to KZSB AM 1290.
You are listening to Dr. Kimberly Taylor. You can reach her by calling 564-1290 or toll free at 866-564-1290.
Hi, we're back with Jessica Carbino, who is a PhD candidate in sociology, and she focuses on online dating. So let's speak for a moment just about the safety factor. Our last call had said is, how safe is this and how can we be more safe? Do you have any hints about what people might need to do, whether they're going to create a profile online or whether they're going to use some of these mobile dating apps?
Sure. One thing I would definitely encourage people to do is don't give very identifiable information about yourself in your online dating profile or app. If you are an attorney and you tell people you're an attorney, you went to UCLA, you tell them you went to Harvard for law school, and then you provide them with your address, your age, etc., being your neighborhood, people can figure out who you are very easily. So I would encourage people to not provide too much information about their background so as to avoid being targeted not only for scams, but also to protect their safety if they go on a date and the date doesn't necessarily go quite so well. At the same time, when you're talking to somebody, you want to gather as much information as possible about them so that you can sort of perform your own search. So I think that's something that people should definitely bear in mind. But at the same time, I think that people, while we think of online dating as being so distinctive from other forms of dating out there, I think at the same time, the same common sense rules that we use to apply in dating should also apply in the online dating realm. If someone doesn't seem necessarily up to snuff, you should definitely trust your instincts and go with them.
Do you think that using this kind of online dating or these apps, do you think that it has drastically changed dating behavior and just the very act of courtship and romance?
Well, I do think it certainly changes things with regards to at least the initial partner selection process. People now have the option of being able to go out with 7 different people 7 days a week if they so choose. So people have the opportunity to be far more picky about what they necessarily think they want and may not necessarily commit as fast to an individual who seems to be presumably what they're looking for, but they can always engage in this grass is always greener mentality when dating. So I think that's an issue, that people are not necessarily as willing to settle and are not necessarily as willing to accept people's mistakes and flaws as easily.
I think that it does seem that to maintain a long-term connection, it still takes a certain kind of skill set, that this kind of instant gratification or dating 7 people at a time, that it's just not a process that people are able to gather that kind of skill set that it might take for what kind of dating relationship they might want later on. Do you think that online dating is the way of the future?
Absolutely. I think that online dating is only going to continue to grow. It's a $2 billion industry. I can't imagine it not growing given how people have become so much more reliant on technology. In fact, there was a recent study conducted by JDate and Christian Mingle about how people would actually prefer to meet a partner, and people said they would actually prefer to meet a partner online than through friends or family. At the same time, we know that people still want to be able to have some type of social accountability mechanism available, which is why so many sites like Coffee Meets Bagel and Tinder try to at least provide some type of information regarding mutual connections. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting to see that.
One thing that I also found out just by doing my quick research online is that most of these sites are developed by men. Do you think that because of that they actually take into consideration some of the needs of women, and what might those be?
Well, I think that women might be more concerned regarding different factors, but I think that men, such as socio-emotional connection, etc. But I think that if you had a group of people who were more attuned to the important issues that would create compatibility between couples, then I think that you could be successful. For example, Dr. Neil Clark Warren, who founded eHarmony, I don't think because he's a man he can't understand emotional connections that women form between men. I think that some of the online dating sites have been formed by people who are just entrepreneurs who see a niche market that they want to dive into. I don't necessarily think gender is as important as we might think. I think it's always good to have a woman's perspective because they obviously can add something to the conversation, but I don't necessarily think there's something wrong with the site just because it is a man.
Well, we have one more call coming in right now. Let's take that call. Hi, we're on the phone with Emily. Do you have a question about dating online?
Yes, I do. So, let's just say I've been in a relationship with somebody online for a couple months now, and my parents have been asking me about who I'm talking to or whatever, and I was just wondering if there's any advice you can give me on letting my parents know that I am in a relationship online, because my parents are very old-fashioned and they believe in the whole getting to know somebody face-to-face rather than over the computer or over the phone or something. So I was just wondering how I could go about that, telling my parents.
Okay, and is it that you have not met him yet? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay, so you are just doing this online.
Correct.
Okay, so we actually really wouldn't call this dating. We'd call it you have a pen pal.
Okay.
Or are you sexting and doing that kind of?
No.
Okay. So what it sounds like is that you're just building a friendship. You're getting to know somebody. This is a pen pal that you have found, and yes, you found him online, but you're finding out whether you have things in common, whether you're a good match, and you're waiting until you figure that out until you meet him. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. What part of that do you think your parents wouldn't understand?
I mean, because it's always been about bringing people to the house, meeting my parents face to face, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I think I've developed some type of feelings for this person. And I just don't think my parents really understand the connection that you can make over the internet.
Okay, but what I think that you might do is to sit down and talk with them and just let them know what you're doing, and tell them that this is kind of like what people used to do, where they wrote letters to each other and they had pen pals and they got to know each other, and then they would develop a friendship and then feelings for each other, and that the day is coming that you're feeling like, because of this and the time that you have spent to get to know someone, that you are now ready to meet him, and that you are going to take that next step. And that's something that they would probably understand.
Yeah.
But
all right.
But stop lying to them or not letting them in on this. They also need to maybe know that you are doing this, but you're doing this in a very safe way.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. I know, I guess when you say it makes it sound a lot easier.
Yeah. Just be a bit braver.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. So we are back with Jessica Carbino, who has really focused online dating. And it sounds like you've been out there really doing some really good work to let us know what is going on out there and the ins and outs and what's safe and what's not. And so I would like to thank you very much for being on our show. Is there any last word that you have about what you think that people need to know about online dating and or the mobile apps that you're talking about that are really the wave of the future?
Well, Dr. Taylor, thank you so much for having me. It's really been my pleasure to be on. I think the last thing I would add would be that people should approach online dating as one means by which to meet somebody. When dating online, you have to remain open to meeting people through a variety of other means, whether it be a blind date, through a religious institution, at work, at school, and really just be able to embrace online dating as just another way to meet somebody.
Okay, that is really good words. So thanks for being here, and we'll be right back after the break. I'm Kimberly Taylor, and you're listening to KZSB AM 1290. So as we come to the close, I think I'm really kind of thinking about, and maybe you are too, is online dating going to be able to help create and maintain real and meaningful relationships? And I also think about, will they be healthy? Will they be as fulfilling as the face-to-face kind of courtships that we all used to know? And I think that what we're finding, and what I do hear from the college-age students, is that it is still possible to make connections online, and that they're seeing it more as it lays the foundation for maybe a healthy and even a longer-term relationship. So it does look like that the online dating is here to stay. So whether it's your texts or sex or posts or tweets or video chats, maybe if you start to think about them as that they all are just a part and can aid you in the getting to know you stage of mating and dating. And it is a way that it does allow people who might never have met, who aren't connected through friends or family or at work, that it can help them to find each other. What we do know is that whatever has happened, we all do adjust to new forms of technology, and over the generations we've had to adapt, and we will continue to find partners and develop bonds and procreate just like we have in the past. So I want to thank my guest, Jessica Carbino. You can reach her by getting her info on my website at drkimtaylorshow.com, and I want to thank you for joining me. And I welcome any comments that you have. You can also email me at drkim@drkimtaylorshow.com. These shows are also rebroadcast Thursdays at 10 p.m. and Sundays at noon right here at KZSB AM 1290. So as we close, let me thank our new sponsor, CRC Healthcare. They are a large group of treatment centers, and they're here to help you, so give them a call. I'll be here next Thursday between 2 and 3, and I look forward to having you join in. So meanwhile, have a great week, and don't forget, nobody else has to change for you to be better.